I'm going to call the meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order the Columbia Planning and Zoning Commission. January 13th, 2025 is our first meeting of the year. And welcome. Happy 2025, everyone. We are not seating any alternates as we have all the regular members present. Fred, please feel free to participate in the discussion. The only limitation is if you're a not seated alternate, is if we had some sort of public hearing, you can't speak up as a member of the commission, and if we were debating an issue. But if you have questions as a member, whether you're seated or not, please feel free to weigh in. We always want you to participate if possible legally. Marty, have you been at a regular meeting? Yes, you have. I'm sorry.
I have.
Just want to make sure.
That's fine.
My memory's terrible. Any changes or additions to the agenda? John, anything? Okay.
No, I do not. Thanks.
Okay, the minutes of December 23, 2024. Any corrections, changes? I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Justin seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Holcroft, thank you. We have nothing under audience of citizens. Anything from the public that isn't already on the agenda? We appreciate you being here. No unfinished business to address. New business. First item up, we have a special permit application, a change of use for 326 Route 87. The addition of a new restaurant use. The applicant is Jeff Monroe. The Gardens of Our Descent Farm LLC DBA. The Good Farm owner is Savvy ROI LLC and Chen Family Investments LLC. Map 17, lot 47, Zone M, lot area 0.79 acres, section 52.7 of the regulations. Who is going to make a statement on this first, the applicant or our town planner?
I don't know if the applicant is in the room.
Yeah, he is.
He's here.
Jefferson's here. Okay. I don't want him to necessarily go into too much detail because this is requiring a public hearing, but this is a special permit change of use at I believe the building is sort of known as the Landmark. It's, the building on the northwest corner of Routes 87 and Route 66. And Jefferson and his partner are looking, he's had run a food truck there the last several months called Twin Beaks. Excellent chicken. And is looking to establish himself permanently as part of that facility. There would still be an exterior trailer, but a portion of the operation would be taking over the lower level space that was previously a salon or a hair studio. And again, it's a change of use in the mixed use district that requires a special permit. So really all you need to do at this point is receive the application and schedule it for a hearing. Ideally, I think we could have the hearing 2 weeks from now, the 27th of January. I believe we have enough time to get the legal notices in. So if you wanted to go ahead and fast track that, we could have a public hearing on the 27th.
Okay. Let's just vote to set the public hearing for January 27th, 2025. Anyone want to discuss anything else on the commission? Okay, I'll make a motion that we set the public hearing for January 27th, 2025 as part of our 7 p.m. meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. That's unanimous. Okay. All right. That's the date of the public hearing, 2 weeks. Hopefully we can get this addressed. Next up, item 7.2 is the creating a timeline for our 2026 plan of conservation and development. We did speak in general terms about this previously. John, do you have a really specific timeline in mind, or?
No, and I believe is it a 2016 plan? So we're due in 2026, is that right? Let me double check the date of the,
I won't say yes unless I go back to my written records, but.
it's, yeah, I believe, yeah, it's 2016 plan. It was adopted in June. So we basically have about 16 months or so. Yeah, so the process is basically, I think the first thing we would want to decide, and I think we may have already, or maybe the regulations committee was sort of leaning this way, is if you want to basically undertake the process of writing the plan as part of the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings generally, and so it would essentially be a committee of the whole managed out of the Planning and Zoning Commission with, you know, other stakeholders and, you know, people you want to talk to sort of invited to address the commission. The alternative would be to, you know, establish an ad hoc subcommittee that would, you know, consist of some members of planning and zoning, maybe people from conservation or economic development, or you know, Parks and Rec or Board of Selectmen, you know, other entities to constitute sort of an interdisciplinary board. You could do it either way. My sense was, Mr. Chair, that the regulations committee was thinking handle it essentially in-house and let the Planning and Zoning Commission manage the process.
Yeah. To summarize that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
So at our last subcommittee meeting for regulations, we kind of bantered it around, but it's really a whole commission perspective that we're looking for, not just that subcommittee. But the thought that was put forth, and I supported, I think we were unanimous, is first of all, we don't need to go and hire an outside consultant or a separate consulting process to redo the plan. I think the plan has a lot of soundness in it as it is, and that we probably only need to revise the plan and maybe revisit each section and discuss whether it's still pertinent and what revisions might be needed to make it timely for 2026 going forward for the next 10 years. And that we could probably do it during the course of our regular meetings, because we don't have a lot of development work coming in. So in terms of what's on our agenda, there are applications and things, but we don't have this massive commitment to our time that, well, like we might have had 10 years ago. So at this point, where we felt was reasonable was to do it in-house. John felt he could handle the updates as an in-house process. We feel like we have a very good template and process for the plan of conservation and development. There may be some newer things that we've already addressed in regulation changes. Part of this would be making sure the POCD is in harmony with those most recent regulation changes going forward, so that it's all in balance. Also, the POCD needs to be in balance on an ongoing basis. I'm saying this more for the newer members, in order to facilitate any grant funding that we may want to do. Whenever the town goes out for any grant funding, one of the things that we want to do is make sure the POCD reflects the direction of the town, and that can support a potential grant application. So to that end, we would likely engage the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator and any other relevant parties outside the Planning and Zoning Commission to help make sure that we have the right tool in place to help them achieve their goals. So any thoughts from the commission? And if you don't need time, think about it. I don't want to rush anybody, but you know, I think
Rick?
Yes.
Rick? I think the
Yes.
last time we went through this, we did the same thing. We did it in-house with the assistance of the town planner. One of the things we did do, though, that I think you forgot to mention, is that all of the departments and commissions were sent for their input. There's
Yeah, that would certainly be part of the process, including some public hearings with the public.
Yes, exactly. But I'm on the Lake Management Advisory Committee, and they were asking about this at the last meeting, and I said that part of the process would be to solicit their input for their particular section. So each of the commissions and departments are notified and given the chance to update their particular sections in the POCD.
I can't remember, did they actually come to our meetings or did they present themselves to follow?
I think they were sent out a notice saying that it was their opportunity to update their particular section, and if they wanted to attend the meetings, they could. They didn't have to attend our meetings, but they did have to update their particular sections.
And we have held public hearings in the past, and forgive me, I can't remember whether it was 10, 20, or 30 years ago. For public input, especially for senior housing directives and things like that, we received immeasurable, invaluable input from the public about what they were hoping we could achieve for them. And in some parts, we've been able to achieve those things. Other cases, we've laid the groundwork, but you know, there's more work to be done.
I think the public participation in our regular scheduled meetings helped. And you know, that's, if for some reason we think that we need a public hearing, then I think we could do it. But if we could handle, I think if we could handle it within our regular scheduled meetings, then we should do it that way.
I agree. I have the same.
What's our deadline is what, June of 2026?
Approximately. I don't know. Do we have a hard and fast deadline, John, or is it just by the end of 2026 for having a new one in place?
It would be June of 2026. I believe we have, I think it was, the last one was approved June 27th, 2016. So so essentially the end of the next fiscal year.
If I recall, I think the last time we did this, it took about a year to do.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I think we had it wrapped up by the beginning of the year, that January. I think it was kind of wrapped.
So
right. So we basically, you need to back out, like if you take that June date, June 2026, you need to back out at least 60 days from that, because that's the time you need to place it with the clerk ahead of the public hearing. So we'd actually be looking to, June, May, April of 20, to actually have it complete draft ready to go. And then we have a couple months for the public hearing.
Public hearing.
So I'm gonna make, I want to know how everyone feels about this, but I think making this a regular agenda item from this point forward, so we can take the refinement of it in small bits, so it doesn't overwhelm us, especially as we get toward the end. And if we're done early, we're done early.
We're starting now, and I think it's a good idea, and we should really encourage the other commissions and boards and committees to, even if they dedicate one person to liaison or they participate, like they really need to participate for sure.
I think the start of this would be a schedule, a notice to all the pertinent parties that we would want input from, getting it out now with a proposed timeline for what the action points would be, that we're looking for input, and we might want input by June of 2025, a direct input, and that we plan to hold public hearings, probably going into, we found that we didn't get a lot of attendance during the summer. So maybe we either aim at the spring or the fall of 2025. We can do it in the spring of 2025, but at least put out that proposed timeline so nobody feels blindsided and they all feel that they can be aware of what our process is, and those same stakeholders, make sure that we update them with information about any updated timeline that we have. And, if we have a goal of having the POCD updated and implement, not so much implemented, but ready to vote on by very early 2026, a year from now, instead of, 14 or 16 months from now, I think that's a good one. Does everyone agree with that concept?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because I think last time there were a few commissions or departments that were sort of lax in their responses. We had to chase them down. So I think, putting them on notice early, giving them a couple of potential deadlines so that they know this is when we need their information back would be a really good idea.
So between now and next meeting, John, and maybe through the regulation subcommittee, come up with a list of all those stakeholders, including any new stakeholders that we want to make sure are notified. There's various housing commissions and senior commissions that we want to make sure everybody's aware of this, and as much as possible have a comprehensive list of all the potential people, and we'll review it here so that maybe by our next meeting, we have a comprehensive list of all the stakeholders that we've all been able to weigh in on, and that would be the first step, I would think. And then we'll make sure that we have a timeline developed maybe between our next meeting and the meeting after that. And go from there, and if you feel you need to revise that plan or that concept, let's just don't talk about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we should have a timeline for all of these by April. And maybe then put June 30th as a date that they have to get their stuff in, then. Cause they're not all gonna do it by June
That's
30th,
correct.
but we can go. As
Okay.
the jumping off point.
Okay,
Cause
good.
it seems that we kind of got rushed the last time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up when you did, John. I think this is a good start. Any other thoughts on this tonight? This is done.
Yeah, Jonathan, 103 Lake Road. I have, two questions. Well, one's comment. First of all, on the town website, could you please make sure that the POCD is findable?
Good
It's
point.
buried so deep. Because I've already asked my Open Space and Conservation Commission members to go to the website and read the document. And they all came back and said, it's not there, we can't find it. So that's my number one comment. Number two, in previous POCD updates, questionnaires were sent out to the general public, I think through the mail, like a little poll to get,
We did.
I thought so. And I just wondered if you plan to do that again or not.
We should.
Well, we'll talk about what our process is as we go forward. I think the first step will be identify all the different stakeholders that we want to make sure are continuously updated on the process. And then what the process is something, but we would really welcome this input. And I can imagine we're gonna look at what we did last time as a template. But the commission will decide that.
Thank you.
I would be happy to also just we've done for a number of towns a public input survey online to solicit broad public input, and that's something that we could look at examples of at very early on in the process. I also just wanted to ask, so just point out where on the town website currently the plan of conservation and development is, and if the commission or the public believes it should be somewhere else. So I'll just quickly navigate so you can see. So this is the town website. Do you see that? The splash page of the town website?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to the Your Government tab under Boards and Commissions, and then navigate to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this is the Planning and Zoning Commission page. It's right here, the second document under supporting documents. So it's 3 levels deep. If you know more or less where you're going, it's easy to find, but yeah, it's I don't know, it's right there.
I don't know if we can get more accessible than that.
Can we just put a little link to it, on the front page, it says, on the home page, where it says,
We can ask.
right under,
We
So
always
this is the main
listen,
page.
we always listen to you.
so any idiot can find it.
Okay.
We can put a link.
Yeah, let's see what we can do at the town level. We can't speak for the town, only for the planning and
See,
zoning
they've got a
commission.
little text, my God, thing. And we
Right
can
here?
put POCD, yeah, that's sitting there. So why not put another little?
Yeah.
Well, I think we deserve special treatment, don't you?
Okay, all right, well, that's something, yeah, we can ask,
We'll work on it. I
Yeah,
appreciate this
yeah.
suggestion.
Thank you.
No, I really do. Hi, Savannah, welcome.
Okay.
Hi, how's it going?
Yes, we have Go ahead, Rhonda.
Rhonda Kincaid of Basket Shop Road. I think you've talked about this before, but I think if you can dovetail this with the affordable housing plan that I think is also going to be due about the same time. There's some overlap
You
between.
probably won't dovetail it, but make sure that whatever
Dovetail.
your affordable housing needs are, that we hear plenty about that from
Right.
all the
There's
stakeholders.
some overlap.
Yes,
So just if you're
Well-
gonna put something out to the community,
yeah, but it isn't really overlap, because a plan of conservation is the goals for the town for the future.
mhm,
And if the goals coincide with what the affordable housing goals are, then we would incorporate some of it in, and you may call it overlap, it's more supporting. Structure in place to help achieve those goals. So it's important that we understand what those groups want incorporated. Yeah. Okay, we all good?
Good.
Anything else? Thank you. We're gonna move on to the next item. Justin, do you wanna take over this part, since you're the head of that subcommittee?
Sure, so try to do some justice to this and not waste everybody's time and be here for an hour, but to kind of get through this fairly quickly. I'll give you some context as we go through, so this is kind of the second round in the regulation revision subcommittee, we hit 6 items, which I'll just kind of go through one by one, and whoever put this agenda together did a really nice job, because we hit the easy ones first. Those were still some textual stuff, in the first few. Kind of the same, idea as before, when we hit the other items that we changed, was just how can we make things easier, make more sense. Take some verbiage out that might be redundant or confusing, so hopefully you'll see that as a theme, and obviously these are just our proposals at this point. These are simply drafts, and I think probably the best course of action, I'm sure Walt, Rick, and I are happy to answer as many questions as anyone has. But it'd probably be a great idea for you to kind of digest this and look through it and see the changes and kind of try to get them in context. Even if that's on your own time as well. Obviously, we're not making any decisions here other than just kind of reviewing things. So the 6 sections that we hit were minor home businesses without a permit, and I'll go through all of these individually as well. Prohibited uses, structure square footage, agricultural regulations, farm winery regulations, and then soil erosion and sediment control. So if you go in the agenda, you'll see the map for the special permit that we scheduled. So right after that starts the drafts for the zoning amendments. It starts with 8.5. So how we kind of got to these 6 sections was similar to what we did before. So we heard from the public. Actually, John and Savannah had some great suggestions about some issues that they've seen come through town hall, which we've tried to address in a couple of these, where it's directly from zoning enforcement saying, hey, can we adjust some of this? It doesn't make sense, or we should be able to make it easier. So their input on this has been invaluable. So let's start with 8.5, home occupations. And for those in the public, basically this is if
8.1.
Huh?
8.1.
8.5.
8.5.
8.5.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, so it's confusing. In our agenda, it says it's agenda item 8.1, but actually it's 8.5 in the zoning regulations, so. So when you get to that page, it's 8.5, just a coincidence there. So home occupations, if you have a home and you are running some level of business out of your home. Here. Okay. The zoning regulations set forth criteria for that. So one of the things that Savannah brought to our attention was someone in town who wanted to run a business out of their house, but there was no traffic. It was something to the effect of like a home recording studio. They were doing like media stuff on their own. They had a business, but there was no traffic coming in and out, no deliveries. And we tossed around the idea of creating a home occupation category that is that does not require a permit. So if you have a business in your home, generally you have to have a permit. I'm not gonna go through all the requirements for that, we're not addressing that particular piece, but what we're saying is if it has zero impact or negligible impact or no more impact than the Amazon driver coming in and out of your driveway, then should we really be requiring a permit for that? So that was section H, which is proposed at the bottom of that page, a home occupation that does not involve the additional employees, client, customer visits, shipping, receiving, commercial vehicles, signage or outdoor storage beyond a customary residential baseline is requested to register the occupation with the town clerk, but is not considered a minor, moderate impact or major impact home occupation and is not required to obtain zoning authorization. And this came directly from someone wanting to do this. We heard about it through Savannah and thought that that was something that we should adjust in the regulations to make things easier for people. The only other thing in that section that we're proposing to change is under item B, so 8.5.1 item B. The individuals conducting the home business shall reside in the dwelling unit, whereas before we had both own and reside, which make it easier, like, you know, we thought it would make it easier by not requiring that they own it, like if they rent or whatever. They would still be allowed to do that. So there's a textual change there and then just the addition to that. So after each one of these, that's literally the first one. That's a pretty straightforward one. I'll just pause, and if anybody wants to interrupt with a question or interject with a question, please feel free to do that. Okay. So prohibited uses. So if you go to the next page. So here's one of the challenges with our regulations, the way that they're formatted is if something in many cases is not explicitly allowed within our regulations, then it's not allowed, which is hard to manage. All right. So we tossed around some ideas on how we can say, all right, well, how do we have some level of flexibility with people who want to do reasonable things in town? And also simultaneously not make our regulations 1,000 pages and list out, enumerate every reasonable activity that someone can do in town. Essentially, it's what we proposed with this. So you can see the highlighted underlined wording at the bottom. Notwithstanding other prohibitions in these regulations, the commission reserves the right to determine whether a proposed use that is not specifically permitted is substantially similar to another use that is permitted by these regulations. If the commission makes that determination, the proposed use may be permitted via the established procedure, administrative permit, site plan, or special permit that is required by the most similar use in the designated zoning district for the property in question. So it allows someone to not hit a brick wall and be told, no, you can't do it because it's not close enough to another activity that's allowed. It allows them to come in front of us and we can make that determination. And it gives us flexibility in the sense that if we're like, now this is way off base, it's not close to anything, then we can go back and address that if we have to. But we know for sure that in some circumstances, something is similar to, it's not exactly the same as another allowed activity, but it's similar enough to where we could make that judgment. So that's prohibited uses. If there's any questions, I'll pause. Okay. Next one, structure square footage. So 7.4.5 and then 21.4.6 on the next one. This is really just textual. So what this does is in certain conditions, you can have an accessory building, an unattached accessory building that per lot may meet 50% of the side or rear yard setback requirements for buildings as specified in the district of if the following conditions are met. So this is allowing for closer setbacks than the normal required setbacks. Now, we're not really changing anything other than to align the square footage. So if you see, the only change in there is that the ground coverage of the building does not exceed 120 square feet was the old verbiage, and now we're raising that to 200. And we're doing that for a couple reasons, and if I'm forgetting a reason, anybody interject, Paul, Richard, or John. But really what this is about is if you look at permitting, if it's a building permit or a health code permit, any structure that you're dealing with, the permitting is 200 square feet. That's like a common number that someone came up with at some point. And what this does, it allows homeowners to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit larger size structure, that also aligns with those 200 square foot numbers, which seem to be prevalent in other areas and other permitting situations. So it's really not changing a whole lot other than that specific square footage requirement, giving people a little bit more flexibility, and 200 square feet isn't, you know, it's not that large either, so we felt that it could, that we could accommodate
It's a
that.
shed.
It's a shed, yeah. At the end of the day, we gotta realize what it is. It's a shed. And then the surface changes, you know, that also, we did mitigating parcel surface changes. We also adjusted that to 200 square feet. That's the 21.4.6. So it's just alignment.
Plus, excuse me, Justin,
Yes,
you said it's 200 square feet, right?
the proposal was 200
Right,
square feet.
proposed, which is, say, 10 by 20, which is about the size of a single car garage.
Okay.
It's-
Small.
I'm sorry?
A small single car garage. Yes.
Yeah.
Right, right. So it's a little bit bigger than a shed, you say, but as you said, it does align more with the building code and things like that, so. Okay,
Okay, let's see, height, area, yard requirements. Shoot, John, you may have to remind me on this one. We just deleted some stuff on the next page under 7.7. Height, area, yard requirements. Can you just remind me on that one?
So, I'm sorry, we're on, yeah, oh, that's at the bottom, that we had a minimum habitable floor area, basically the minimum square footage for, dwelling units, and the state
Oh.
in 2021 eliminated that as a power of local zoning authorities. There is no arbitrary minimum.
Yeah, I'm
So
sorry.
this is-
That one we have to do. Yeah, so we have no minimum square footage for dwellings anymore. We can't say you have to build a minimum of 1,500 square foot single family house like the state,
Only 750.
or 750 or anything. So there's no minimums on that. That's a state requirement, so. Okay. Next one is agricultural regulations. This was the last couple, the last one isn't that extensive. The next two are fairly extensive, so. Let me get on the record a couple things for the agricultural piece. Okay, so I think the three of us agreed in this direction that we're going with this. I can tell you from my perspective, and I don't know how everyone else's experience is, the reason this was important was because when I get complaints or concerns from residents, so much of it, like the plurality, is around agricultural activities. And not in the sense that people are complaining about other people's agricultural activities. They're complaining like, well, why can't I have a chicken? Or why does this make sense? So there's that piece of it where when we started going through this, and I've had my eye on this for a long time, because it's very burdensome, some of this, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. So I'll try to give you a synopsis of what we're proposing as we go through here, but there's some other things that we need to take into consideration. So Columbia has a right to farm ordinance. We've had it for a very long time. If you come into town, we see the signs now, they put right to farm signs up. The problem is that we have contradicting zoning regulations for people wanting to do reasonable agricultural activities, whether it's a small scale or a large scale. So I think what this helps us do is bring the regulations in line with the right to farm ordinance, which, you know, if you look at other towns who have right to farm ordinances, I believe that for the most part, that's what they've done as well, is they've truly made it a right to farm town within reasonable guidelines and restrictions. Again, there was a lot in there that created more frustration for people. There's a lot in here that doesn't make sense. And, you know, agriculture is very, very important. And I'll tell you just personally, this is something that I've struggled with on my property. And it's something that I have a level of expertise in, because I've been involved in agriculture my whole life. So when I look at some of this stuff, it's like, why are we doing this? And it's really not helping anybody. So some of it is kind of redundant language and just stuff that we really shouldn't comment on within the regulation. That's some of that in the first page. Some of it is also already regulated other places. So if you see the first one, we've crossed out some sections here. So we're talking about, you know, the following accessory uses are permitted in an RA zone, while storage of vehicles and equipment necessary for used for an accessory to agriculture and farming operations on a farm, provided such vehicles and equipment shall not be used elsewhere for non-farming purposes except for snow plowing. So it seemed a little bit micromanagement there, so we changed it just simply accessory structures and vehicles related to the agricultural use of the property. So instead of trying to like hit every single possible point, we're just kind of simplifying the language. We did cross out livestock. If on a small farm, a zoning permit is required to keep large animals and small animals in excess of 20. No zoning permit required to keep less than a total of 20 small animals. Checked with Savannah, I might be wrong, I checked with John, the committee talked about it. I don't know that we've ever given a permit to someone for a goat or a chicken or a cow. And the problem is that would be a management nightmare, because if you're dealing with a small herd of animals that might be used for meat or another purpose, you cycle your livestock through, and then what do you need to do? Go get more permits? So that piece of it, we just took out. It doesn't make sense. We haven't utilized it before, and I don't know that we need to permit every single animal or large animal that we have. Okay. So next page goes over a matrix. And John, I think the rabbits we crossed out as well, but so let's look at how we did it before, how it currently is, and what we're proposing. So right now there's a minimum lot size, and that minimum lot size basically stays 3 acres. But what we did is we took different species of animals and said, okay, you need a minimum lot of X for a cow, and then a donkey, and then a horse, and a goat, and a sheep, and a chicken. It doesn't really work that way in the real world. So you can have cattle, and you can have a full-grown bovine that weighs 400 pounds, 500 pounds, a lot of these boutique animals that they have now, or you can have a cow, a single animal that weighs 3,200 pounds. So it's really by husbandry and how you're managing your land, not a matrix telling you exactly how many animals you need to have per acre or per property. It really depends on your situation. So what we did, basically, a couple categories, and we said we're gonna throw everything into one. Equine, bovine, sheep, goats, llamas, donkey, mule, or alpaca, 3 acres. Minimum dedicated for each one. You can see that third column there. We just took that completely out because most zoning commissions are not going to have a huge level of expertise in like, okay, you have this type of animal, you need 2.5 acres fenced in order to keep that animal. That really needs to be up to the person who is raising that animal. That's good animal husbandry. There are laws against animal abuse. There are laws against, you know, having animals unkept. So it just gets to a point of micromanagement where a lot of people don't necessarily have that expertise, and we don't want to put that on a zoning enforcement officer to make those determinations. And then obviously enforcement of it, like it's difficult to begin with. And then so that's the first line, and then the third column, other requirements, livestock, housing, and manure storage area shall be 50 feet from offsite residential dwellings. We went to 100 feet on that. But the idea with this, John, you tell me if I'm right, I'm not seeing it in here, and I'm sorry. We did have, I feel like this is something that we changed. We changed from an offset or a setback from offsite residential dwellings instead of property lines. I think, John, wasn't it before it was 50 feet from a property line, or it currently is?
Correct. It was, well, there were a couple of different measures, and we are basically splitting it. So it's the larger animals we are proposing to separate from offset residential dwellings rather than property lines of 100 feet. And for smaller animals, rabbits and chickens, it'll be 50 feet from offsite. Largely because if you've got, you know, And that's just housing and manure storage, not animal facilities, because previously, in theory, you would have to, if the animals were penned in a paddock or a fenced area, that fenced area would have to be offset from property lines. And generally speaking, animals can graze, should be allowed to graze sort of anywhere on the property. So we just shifted it from the animal facility as a whole to specifically the animal housing. So the barn or the stable or the coop and manure piles, those would be offset from neighboring residences. So to be a little bit more, I guess, generous to the farmer and still protective of the neighbors.
Exactly. So looking at it more from,
Can I just make one point?
yeah,
So one of the reasons for the offset from other dwellings had to do with, quite frankly, Justin has this on his land, a circumstance that was quite pertinent. What if you have a long, narrow lot and it becomes unusable because of the side yard setbacks? We're trying to be reasonable, because a lot of people do have 5-6 acre lots that are only 200 feet wide and they go way back. So how do we let them use the land in a way that doesn't really impact their neighbors? So if it's offset from a neighbor's residence, it obviously has to be on the property, but it doesn't have to conform with side yard zoning setbacks, just conform with a reasonable distance from another residential dwelling. And we thought that that was a really enforceable thing, because if you have a residential dwelling and you feel like somebody's violating it, I think it's relatively easy for the zoning enforcement officer to go out to somebody who has a concern and establish what a reasonable distance is.
Yeah, it makes a
Setback
lot,
from the residence.
yeah, it makes a lot more sense being a setback from a dwelling instead of just arbitrarily to the property line, so.
Yeah, and this just goes to trying to expand to a reasonable level, the right to farm. One other thing I wanted to point out, many years ago, we changed from having a residential district in town, we no longer do. We have a residential agricultural district. We didn't want people, we wanted them to know that that was kind of the first step in who we were as a town.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's, and you can see if you go down that second line, we just moved that up, so the sheep, goats, along with donkeys, that just goes into large animal. And then swine is actually regulated by the state, so all we did is reference state statutes in that third column. And then follow whatever the state guidelines are. So as far as I remember, as far as livestock, just general livestock, swine is really the only one that has specific state regulations around it. So there's no need for us to change that. And that's both in acres, minimum lot size, and in, the other issues with keeping swine. And then small animals, I may have to go back in my notes, John. I think where we landed, and I'm sorry I didn't catch this till earlier, that rabbits, we were just gonna not regulating.
Right, so so small animals, rabbits and poultry, that it spans the bottom of page 6, top of page 7, on that PDF, or in that document. It's basically no minimum acreage for any of those animals except for roosters.
Yep.
And then the same standard 50-foot separation distance from the housing for the animals and manure piles to neighboring residential structures.
Exactly, so ease up on that a little bit with poultry. Lots of people have backyard chickens, and we're just making a decision here, a proposal to not regulate those so harshly, again, making the exception for the roosters. So right below that matrix where that ends, you can see this is where my confusion came from. So we crossed out 75 buildings used for sheltering animals and storing supplies shall be of suitable construction materials. Buildings housing livestock and or animal waste and refuse on any parcel shall be located at least 75 feet from an adjoining property line. So that's currently what it is. And we are proposing only for that to read now 100 feet from any offsite residential dwelling. So that aligns it with the matrix and what we looked at earlier. Plus, again, solely going off of setbacks to property lines can be problematic because it doesn't take into consideration where the adjoining buildings are, where our neighbors' houses, and that's really where a lot of the concern, we feel should be. All right, next page, there's no changes, so I'm not gonna go over anything that we didn't change. Next page, no changes. This is like small farm accessory structures, farmers market. You can see all of that remains the same. And then on the next page towards the bottom, you can see some changes there, and that's when we start getting into the farm winery section. So, last time the farm winery in town came. in front of
Excuse me, Justin, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
Before you get into this section, Rick, I would request that we withhold any any comments on this and go into executive session for further discussion about this particular item.
We would have to have that on our agenda and,
Executive session.
yeah,
I think there's some comments that may be made that don't necessarily have to be made in public. I think there's some procedural issues here.
okay. Let me do this. Let me talk, when you ask that we don't discuss this evening then,
Yes,
this whole section?
not in public. I'm willing to discuss it in executive session.
Let's defer to that, and then if you, let's set up an executive session for our next meeting to discuss it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so
John, does that make sense to you? I'm not sure what it
I
is.
guess I would maybe want to just circle back one-on-one to discuss maybe the grounds for it, because we have to disclose the grounds for executive session, whether it's an employee matter, a pending litigation, real estate matter. We can talk about
That's
that.
what I was going to address between now and next meeting.
Yeah, and so the other thing, I mean, not to cut off Justin's detailing of this, but ultimately what all of this needs to do is be essentially received as a text amendment application and scheduled for a public hearing, and there can be time to sort of go through the details and the merits at public hearing, if you want to jump to that.
I'd like to explore what Bob's concerns are and discuss whether it can legally be warranting an executive session. And I'd rather do that offline. I'll do it one-on-one, and then if it warrants an executive session, if there's reasons, I'd rather not discuss them in public right now. I'd rather address those concerns, and if I don't agree, we'll figure something out. But if he feels that there's something that's a valid reason, I would defer to his perspective on it at this point. So not discussing it is what my preference is. I'd go with what the commission thinks.
With which section is in question?
About the farm winery.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with whatever the commission wants to do.
Is everyone okay with that? It's just deferring for a couple of weeks. I'll talk with you offline, Bob and John.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's fine.
And if we're going into executive session, we do have a legally justifiable, we have to have a legally justifiable reason for it.
Yep.
And if we do, then we'll go that way, and if we don't, this will, surface again at our next meeting.
That's
I
fine.
appreciate you pointing that out, John. It is an important thing. It was the reason I was tending to just say, okay, let's not discuss it tonight. I'd rather err on the side of caution, and then if we do an executive session, it will be a legally justifiable reason, and if we don't have it, it won't be an executive session.
That's fine with me.
Okay, everyone good with that approach? Sure. Okay.
And then just, without talking about that, I would encourage everybody to go through and kind of read and review what we've done, and obviously there'll be lots of time to give suggestions and talk and go from there, so. But I appreciate everyone's help with this.
All right. Thank you. Excellent. A couple of other things that I won't get into any detail about. We do have some other potential thoughts we've entered around as a subcommittee that I think just giving the commission a heads up where we might aim, even after this round of regulations are addressed, would be helpful, and we'll talk about those at our next meeting. Then maybe come up with a list of 3, 4, or 5 items that we've been talking about, so that what we're really looking for from the rest of the commission is a direction from all of you that you'd like to see us aim at modifying regulations. If you know of something that's a problem. And the other part of this is we have a level of engagement with our staff. And I don't want to just call you staff, our professionals, Savannah and John We get a huge amount of input from them. Now that Savannah has been participating in the subcommittee meetings and she's at our meetings, we're gonna be receiving and have been receiving real-time feedback about ways that we can make our regulations more effective. Based on what everybody's receiving and Mary Kay, the job you do, we appreciate it. We have a level of support professionally that's just at the best I've ever seen. So and I want everyone to know that we appreciate you.
And Rick, not to interrupt, we do have that last one about the conditions related to soil erosion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to touch on that?
No,
No, you wait on that.
go ahead if you want.
Okay, yeah, I forgot that, that's another simple one. Savannah, you can comment on this one too, because this was a Savannah suggestion, which was a really good one. So essentially, there's conditions relating to soil erosion and sediment control. It's the very last page. And I'm probably gonna butcher kind of the procedural piece behind it, Savannah, so feel free to comment, but essentially, as part of a building project, there's soil erosion, considerations that need to be looked at by the developer. And depending on the topography, there may be less or more chance of soil erosion and things of that nature. So the way that the regulations are currently written, there is a fee, basically a bond that the developer has to pay in order to correct, basically
Temporarily posted.
temporarily posted bond. So that if something happens, then they can use those funds to address anything with soil erosion, essentially. And Savannah had some suggestions that, well, not every situation is the same. There are some conditions that really you're not going to have erosion, and because this is kind of a black and white regulation, the way it's written now, like everybody has to pay that bond. She felt there was some conditions where if we had a little bit more flexibility, or that she had that flexibility to make that decision about the bond, whether it was necessary or not, that would be something that we could address in the regulation.
Propose for the CEO to be able to waive the need for a bond if she didn't feel it was needed.
Yeah, exactly.
In simple. Is that best good summary, Savannah?
Yep, no, that's good. The only thing I would add is that historically it's, the bond has been calculated, estimating the cost it would take to regrow the grass on you built a new house and you've torn up all this dirt and you need to regrow the grass. So the cost of seed and loam and whatever you need. And then also erosion control, so silt fence, things like that. So it kind of gives me more ability to not include quite the same amount of numbers, especially if the lot is just flat. If there's contours in the back, maybe the fee will be higher. And I did receive some comments from builders in the area that they would like to see less intense bonds. Historically, the bonds have been somewhere between, I think, like $5,000 and $9,000. So pretty high.
Good.
Yeah, along the lines of making it easier, making more sense, more flexibility. So that was a really good idea.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, communication and reports. Anything, John?
No, just another reminder, there was an email blast that went around the planning and zoning lists today, just reminding people of the training opportunity hosted by Connecticut Bar taking place. No, I don't remember when it's taking place, in the spring.
Was it March?
It was the Bar Association. It was March 22nd, Saturday, March 22nd, online, 9:00 a.m. to 4:30. This will take care of your 4-year planning and zoning commissioner training requirement. So Mary Kay, are you handling registration requests from the commission?
Yeah, I sent out an email a while back. I'm gonna send it out again this week.
Great.
We have a link to open,
Yes.
get on that.
Sure.
Did you send that already or not?
I sent that, well, you had already sent me your
Right,
request to join.
right,
So I have to submit those to Bev.
okay, and then we'll get the link.
And then once we pay
Oh.
the registration for
Yeah,
everyone. So if you're
members.
interested in taking it, I just.
You know, I've been through it, I think 3 or 4 times, It's a really informative presentation by the Connecticut Bar Association. Basically, it's the foxes telling us how to guard the hen house. And it's really well put out. You have some of the most intense, most highly regarded land use attorneys in the state putting this seminar on, and it's just a wealth of information to absorb. And we do have a training requirement as a zoning commission. And I'm glad you pointed out that it helps satisfy that. So.
Can I ask how many people have signed up?
Right now?
I will.
I've only received your,
I'm in.
So, yeah, it's the deadline is February 26th for registrations. Mary Kay, I'm gonna just send you another link and reminder. There's a direct email link also, or a direct registration link.
yeah, I sent some dates out in the email, because I just need to receive it earlier than that in order to get the check.
Right.
But I haven't submitted by the
The
26th.
question
I'll send it
that
out again.
it comes to my mind, is there anything legal or illegal about whoever, let's say we have 4 people, 5 people sign up to do this. Could we do it together? So that we can discuss things as it goes
Oh,
along?
yeah, yeah, if you're doing that, we probably would post it as a special meeting just to cover our bases. We would only need 24 hours notice on that, but just if you're gonna be at a public place. So if you wanted to come into town hall on a Saturday or something like that and watch it on the big screen together or something like that. But it's online, so everybody can do it from home. But if you wanted to do it as a collective, it would be a good idea to post it as a special meeting just to avoid any confusion.
Anybody like that idea or dislike that idea or want to think about it?
We'll have to wait and see when it's convenient. That's it.
Well, it's a Saturday.
It's Saturday, the 22nd of March.
Okay, I'm planning on it, so
Right. No,
yeah,
just a thought.
you'll find it really helpful. They cover a lot of topics, including legal process. I'm assuming is on the agenda, how to stay legally compliant in the way that we discuss and consider.
How long has it been since it was in Middletown? 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah, before COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When
that
was
the
it,
last time
John?
I went.
2001?
That was the last time I went. So
It's usually every
Yeah.
2 years. So this is 2025. So last one in person was probably 19. That's probably the
Yeah.
21 and 23 versions were probably all
there was a
online.
big snowstorm for that one.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Anything else anyone wants to bring up, open discussion? Anything from our audience? Thank you for being here. Nothing for executive session this evening. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
You got that one in there.
Let's call that unanimous. That was
Yeah,
unanimous.
it's a unanimous.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
You did a good job on this one.
Bye, John.
You and your crew.
Bye, Steve.
Everybody contributed really
Oh,
well.
yeah, Mary,